Beware of spoilers. I am Adam. It is Thursday, which means the new episode of the Book of Boba Fett that came out yesterday. And Peacemaker came out today. So let's talk about... Well, I haven't seen Peacemaker yet. The first 3 episodes went up at around midnight. I think 3 a.m. my time, midnight Western time. But point is, they're up now. They're downloaded. I have not watched them yet. Because I wasn't waking up till 3 in the morning and then watching another 3 hours of TV. And then getting up at my regular time to go to work, which is, 8 o'clock. So that would have put me at about 2 hours of sleep before a very long day. Bad idea. So, let's talk about Book of Boba Fett. And I'm continuing to have problems with this show. Because here's the thing. I think that a lot of what happens in this show is getting accepted because it's a show about Boba Fett. And I think I voiced this kind of last week. When I said that if the show is called The Book of Fennec Shand, would it be as well received? Because, it's Boba Fett, and Boba Fett's a fan favorite character, but would the show still work to the degree that it does if the show was about anyone but Boba Fett? And I maintain probably not. I don't think that Boba Fett... I think that a lot of the choices here would be considered bad writing if it was a character who was a woman. Here's something that I think that there's been a lot of things that are, I don't want to say anachronistic, because it's not really anachronistic, because Star Wars is, not really in the past, even though it is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, it is kind of anachronistic in a way. Ming-Na Wen appearing didn't take me out of it, because she's one of those actors who kind of disappears into roles. So when, I didn't look at her and be like, oh, okay, that's Agent May from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or oh, that's, Mulan, or oh, that's, whoever. I didn't bump into that in The Mandalorian, when she first appeared, and then when she appeared again. I didn't bump into her any. Danny Trejo appearing, I bump into a little bit, because Danny Trejo is recognizable. I can look at Danny Trejo and be like, oh, that's Danny Trejo. And I think he's the only actor to appear so far that you look at and you're like, oh, that's an actor. It feels kind of weird. And maybe it's just me, because, when I look back at, what's it called? The prequels, I didn't bump into, Christopher Lee appearing in it. And it didn't take me out of it. Oh, that's Christopher Lee. But in a way, it kind of feels like that's something that may be a problem. And I get it. He's got a long history with Robert Rodriguez, so, I totally get why he's there, but I don't think that... I think that is something that takes me out of it. The other thing was the Boston Dynamics dogs in the first episode that I completely forgot about. And it's so weird to me that these dogs are in... That those dog robots are in it, because they're so recognizable in how they move, and they're so, easy to tell, that it's why? I get that Boston Dynamics wants to have their dogs there, their dog robots there, but why? Why is that a thing that, needed to be in this show? It just feels kind of weird to me that these characters, they were there. And it felt too real world, where it's oh, it's taking me out of this completely. Fortunately, this episode was short when it comes to, what's it called? When it comes to, time spent with the Tusken Raiders after he leaves, the Sarlacc pit, because I don't care about that at all. But it was kind of the same thing with Arrow, where I didn't care about what was going on the island in most of the episodes, and then, especially when he left the island, and it's like, well, why is this a thing? Why is he now an assassin for fucking Argus? And they're just, like, not letting him go home. Like, it feels really silly. I don't know. But that's that was to a minimum this episode. And I didn't start, tuning out. I think they're making Boba Fett too likable. And I think that's a bit of a problem. Because, like, here's the thing. I rewatched Return of the Jedi recently. Within the last week, I rewatched Return of the Jedi. And number one, between that and Empire Strikes Back, there is no character who has less of an impact on the plot than Boba Fett. Because he really doesn't do anything besides be the courier that brings Han to Jabba. Besides that, there is no point to him being there. Like, Lobot has more of an active role in the original trilogy than Boba Fett does. His thing is he's menacing, he's standing there, and he's just kind of stoic. And it's like you can't read his face under the mask. He's just kind of there and stoic. Herein lies my problem with that, where it's like, oh, okay, so he's doing this, now we're humanizing him, and it's kind of like, well, I thought people wanted to see the ruthless bounty hunter and all of that. Like, now here's Boba Fett. Like, that was what we're talking about with the last thing. It was like, he's kicking ass, he's doing, like, I don't need to see him cuddling a puppy. Well, a Rancor calf, but, like, the way he does it, it's reminiscent of, like, a person with a puppy. I don't need any of that, because it's just kind of changing the way I view the character, and it's, I don't want Boba Fett humanized. I want him to be the bounty hunter who kills and is a homicidal, not lunatic, but, like, he is ruthless, and he kills without regard, and I think that would work better. And this whole thing about he's going to rule with respect and all of that, well, I don't know if it comes off as naivete or anything like that, but, like, we're seeing in the flashbacks, just things aren't happening where ruling with respect is something that could work. And also, I think the other thing is, it's like, they're not really giving a reason as to why he kind of just abandoned the, why he just abandoned, being a bounty hunter. They're not outlining his relationship with Jabba in any meaningful way, whereas, like, well, why wouldn't he be a bounty hunter? Like, why would he give that up? What happened that made him give that up? We are now 3 episodes in with these flashbacks, and we are no closer to a resolution to that question than we were when we started. And again, that is a problem. There needs to be an answer to that question. Because that's a key piece of information to understand this story, is why is he no longer a bounty hunter? What happened that made him give that up? And the show seems like almost like, not negligent, that's the wrong word, but almost like they don't care enough to explain, like, that key piece of information, because it's like, what the fuck? Like, why would he get, like, bounty hunting is probably less dangerous in the long run than, running an organized crime family on Tatooine, which Tatooine is a shithole, and they make a point of that in this episode, where he's talking to the Hutt twins, and they're like, yeah, this place is a shithole, like, we don't want it. Like, go ahead, have it. Like, you know, there's like a fight over Tatooine now, and it's like they're talking about like, it's so stupid to me, because it's like, if I'm what's it called? It feels like he's just clinging to something for the sake of clinging to it, but not really. And it's like, why does he want Tatooine is a question of like, oh, well, because we know what Tatooine is. We, the audience, know what Tatooine is. If we, the audience, don't assign significance to Tatooine, then what's the point of it? And this is him getting into the street urchins that he enlists to help him, and what's it called? Who go and what's it called? Like they all have these multicolored bikes, and they're dressed like, you know, 70s punk kids, and I'm like, come the fuck on. Like, if this was, could you imagine if Rian Johnson put that in one of his things? Could you imagine for a second what the outcry would be if he had, you know, a group of multicultural street kids in his like in his movie, and they were going to be the protectors of Boba Fett? Could you fucking imagine? Like, it would be like, the outcry from that would, I can't even understand why it's something that people aren't calling out. Well, no, I do understand why. It's because people want to see a male lead. So they're willing to put up with things in this show with the male lead that they wouldn't otherwise. So, I don't know. And the whole thing with Black Chrysanthemum has petered out completely, which is good that they introduced that character, spent a lot of money on the costume, and is now being released. I'm assuming he's going to be back, because again, spending a lot of money on the costume and all of that, it would be a waste for him to have come in for 2 episodes and then be like, alright, bye, fuck off. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that would be the case. So, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, there's still a lot going on here that is not the case. But, like, I found myself being like, oh, I like Boba Fett, like he's a likable character, but I'm like, wait, he shouldn't be. Like, think about who Boba Fett is and what Boba Fett has done, and be like, oh, well, I'm not supposed to be liking this character. Like, in the same way, you're not supposed to watch The Godfather and be like, oh, well, I like Michael Corleone. Like, no, he's not the good guy. He's the protagonist, but he's not the good guy. And there's definitely a conversation to be had about what's going on with, with this show, but I just can't find myself feeling interested in it on a continued basis. It's like, think about it. It's like, why, like, if this was any other show, and I think the thing is, it's like, the show is so based on the fact that it's Star Wars, you can't really say remove the Star Wars from it, because if it wasn't Star Wars, the show wouldn't work. Because you can't blindly do, okay, so here's a bounty hunter who used to work for someone who has now taken over his operations. I mean, you could do that, but there's still so much groundwork that needs to get laid before we can get to this point. That is dependent on you seeing things. I don't know. Sorry about that. I'm getting a phone call while I was recording. But yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily a good show or anything like that. It's kind of just not fun to like, that's the problem, is that it's fun to watch, but it doesn't narratively fit with the character as defined up until this point, or what's going on with the broader universe at large. And that's an important thing. Like, it's important that those things match up. Especially if we're looking at, like what's the role of this story in the larger scheme of things. And I still think they're cruising towards bringing in Crimson Dawn. I still think they have to do that because, and the thing is, it's on Tatooine, and that's where Maul's body is. And there's, they mentioned the Witches of Dathomir in this episode. And Boba Fett wants to ride the Rancor, and they mentioned, and in the comic they introduced the spark to resurrect people, so Maul could return, and I would not be surprised if Maul did return. I just wish that wasn't the case. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, they're doing what he wanted to do in the 90s for a sequel. Oh, cool. It's like, okay, well, and then we get a bunch of think pieces like, this is what the sequel trilogy should have been. It's like, shut the fuck up. I don't know. I don't really have too much more to say on this. It's like Crimson Dawn is definitely coming because that's the syndicate that the Hutts are like, yeah, we're fucking off. We're not dealing with this. They already laid claim to it, but they won't say who it is. So it's like, it's gotta be Crimson Dawn. Otherwise, they would just say, like, oh, by the way, this other syndicate is laid claim to it. This is who they are. They're them saying, oh, someone else has laid claim, and it's like, well, okay, who was it? And it's not like it was, what's it called? It's not like it was, if it was the what's it called? The Pike Syndicate, they would have just said the Pike Syndicate has already laid claim. If it was the, another one, they would have said, oh, it's this one that has laid claim. But because they haven't said it, they're kind of setting it up to be a big reveal, like, oh, here's Kira, and here is, everything. And after the next episode, we'll be more than halfway done with this show. So it becomes time to question what is the next step. Because I'll watch him go around and be like, hey, I'm going to try and gain control of Mos Espa, but there's really no control, there's no point to that, and it's kind of like, I have no real interest in doing it. Like, if Star Wars wasn't in the title, I would not be watching this show, and I think a lot of people who are watching the show would be a lot more critical of it if it was the Book of Fennec Shand and not the Book of Boba Fett, and I stand by that. And if it was directed by anyone but Robert Rodriguez, I think even if Favreau directed it, or if Filoni directed it, there'd be conspiracy theories about how the woke mob got them and they were changing what they wanted to do to fit the woke mob's idea. But that would, the fact that it's Robert Rodriguez is seeing, things kept to a low, like, what the fuck was with those speeder bikes? Like, one of each color, like, it's such a weird idea that, like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, why is this a thing? Like, and it's like, I don't know, I just feel like there's so much out there that's not working about this show. It's just becoming a mess, and a mess that they have no interest in fixing. Like, they're just like, fuck it. Whatever. So, yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. Tomorrow we'll have Peacemaker. And until then, have a great rest of your week.